After Oscar and I got back together, I developed abandonment anxiety. I became terrified that he would leave me, so I turned obedient and overly cautious. I no longer dared to cling to him or make excessive demands. But Oscar was the one who panicked. He pinned me down on the bed, his eyes red, questioning me over and over again. Penelope, why are you different from before? Chapter 1. This wasn't the first time I had come to Oscar's company, but it was the first time since we got back together. The receptionist had been replaced by a young woman. The moment she saw me, she couldn't hide the excitement in her eyes. "Ah, are you Penelope? You haven't acted in so long. I really love you." Her cheeks flushed red as she pointed toward the private elevator. "The boss said that whenever you come, you can go straight upstairs." I nodded and walked toward the elevator carrying a thermal food container. Suddenly, the young woman called out to me, "Miss Penelope." Nervously, she handed me a piece of chocolate. "Your performance in Meet Spring was incredibly moving. It's such a pity you didn't win the Golden Orchid Award. But you'll always be the best actress in my heart." Inside the elevator, I stared blankly at the chocolate in my hand. A dull pain spread through my heart. The truth was, the Golden Orchid Award for Best Actress had originally been mine. The organizing committee had already sent out the official notice. But at that time, Oscar had spoiled me so much that I had become reckless and overconfident. Having always acted in art house dramas, I secretly accepted the role of a villain in a suspense film. I wanted to transform my image and try a different style, but he turned it down on my behalf. Oscar and I had a huge argument. "Why won't you let me do it? You rejected it without even discussing it with me. Have you ever respected my opinion?" "There is no particular reason. I just don't think you're suitable for that film." It was simply because Oscar himself didn't like it. "You're only suited for gentle, sweet roles." He always seemed to understand me better than I understood myself. At some point, without realizing it, I had become like a show cat he carefully raised and groomed for competition. I started giving Oscar the cold shoulder, yet I still contacted the film's director, desperately hoping for another chance to audition. But the consequences of that standoff were beyond anything I could have imagined. At the time, the Golden Orchid Awards, one of the most prestigious awards in the industry, had begun its selection process. My work, Meet Spring, was nominated. It received high praise from the committee, and they even sent word to me through official channels. The Best Actress award was supposed to be mine, but because Oscar and I were in a cold war with each other, and because he was the CEO of the group, a leading investor behind the Golden Orchid Awards and countless major entertainment projects, he effortlessly arranged for the award to go to another nominated actress. "What exactly makes you think you're in a position to give me the cold shoulder?" Those were the last words Oscar said to me. They were like a knife thrust suddenly into my chest, cruel and merciless. After that, I left him. For a long time, rumors about me spread throughout the industry. I couldn't get a single acting role. I even ended up hospitalized because of both psychological and physical problems. It wasn't until my agent dragged me to a year-end gala that I met Oscar again, and we got back together. Chapter 2. The top floor contained only Oscar's office. I knocked on the door and heard his voice from inside. "Come in." When he saw that it was me, Oscar froze for a moment before immediately standing up and striding toward me. But as he got closer, his pace slowed. He reached out to take the thermal food container from my hands, yet I subtly avoided his touch. Fortunately, Oscar didn't seem to mind. "How come you're knocking today? You used to just push the door open and walk in." I gave him an awkward smile and handed him the container with both hands. "You haven't eaten yet, right?" "I made some soup." Oscar hesitated and looked at me thoughtfully. "Since when did Penelope learn how to make soup?" "Before our breakup." I would have taken that opportunity to act spoiled and make him praise my cooking in every way possible. But now, all I did was pour the soup into a small bowl and nervously rub the corner of my clothes, waiting for Oscar's judgment. As I stared at the fish soup, simmered into a creamy white color, the same thoughts kept repeating in my mind. What if it tastes bad? What if he doesn't like it? Oscar seemed to notice that something was wrong. He pulled me into his arms. "Are you not feeling well today? Your hands are freezing. Your complexion doesn't look good. And you've barely spoken. You used to start chattering the moment you walked in. You'd comment on everything in my office. From the plants on my desk to the carpet on the floor. The moment I heard that, my body stiffened instinctively. In a tiny voice, I said, "I was too willful before. I'll change from now on." His eyes darkened slightly. The arm around me tightened. Then I watched as Oscar picked up the bowl and started drinking the soup. Only after he took a sip and set it down did I dare to speak. "Is it terrible?" "I'm sorry. I'll keep improving." "You don't need to." "What?" Before I could react, Oscar swept me into his arms and carried me toward the private room attached to his office. Chapter 3. He threw me onto the bed. The curtains were drawn, making the room dim. We could barely see each other's faces. Oscar kissed me forcefully. I responded awkwardly, unsure of what to do. Even when it hurt, I didn't make a single sound of discomfort. I felt unusually exhausted. A layer of cold sweat formed on my back. I didn't know how much time had passed. Eventually, I curled up weakly beneath the blanket, pressed tightly against Oscar. He sat up. I immediately lifted my head to look at him. Oscar stroked my hair. "Get some more sleep. I have a meeting." I didn't move. I simply blinked up at him. Seeing my expression, Oscar leaned over and kissed me. "Do you want me to stay with you?" My fingers unconsciously tightened around the blanket. "It's okay. You should go take care of your work." After saying that, I watched him get dressed and leave the room. The moment the door closed behind him, the last trace of light disappeared from the room. I lay on the bed, staring blankly at the dark ceiling. 1 second after another. A long time later, I finally drifted off to sleep. Chapter 4. That sleep lasted only 2 or 3 hours before I woke up with a start. Ever since my breakup with Oscar, I had often woken from my sleep with a crushing pain in my chest. The episodes never improved after we got back together. If anything, they became worse. Hearing only silence outside, as if no one was there, I got dressed and headed out, intending to leave. Awake already? I hadn't expected Oscar to still be in the office. Apparently, his meeting had ended. Looking tired, he rubbed the space between his brows. I nodded and tidied my hair. Then, "I'm leaving." "Leaving? Going where?" Oscar removed his gold-rimmed glasses. The nose pads had left faint marks on his face. He crooked a finger at me, and I walked over. Oscar pulled a slice of cake from the small refrigerator beneath his desk. "Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Don't you want some cake?" I stared at the strawberry cake for a few seconds. Then I accepted it and carried it back to the desk to eat. The fish soup I had made for Oscar a few hours earlier was still sitting there untouched. It had already gone cold. A faint fishy smell lingered in the air. I ate the cake bite by bite. Oscar came over and sat beside me. "I remember this is your favorite bakery." My assistant happened to be nearby, so I asked him to pick some up for you. "There's more in the fridge. Later I'll have them pack it up so you can take it home after dinner." "Dinner? Where are we going to eat?" Oscar smiled and pinched my nose. "Director Reyes's new film is currently casting. I'm taking you to meet him." Director Reyes was one of the most respected directors in the entertainment industry. His films had won major international awards time and time again. Whenever he announced a new project, countless actors would fight desperately for a chance to join it. Can I really meet him?" Oscar took my hand. Then he cut off a small piece of cake and fed it into his own mouth. "Of course you can. Director Reyes and my mother were classmates in college. Besides, you're talented. I'm sure he'll like you. Consider it my way of making it up to you." Penelope. Chapter 5. Sitting in the car and watching the scenery drift past outside the window, I kept thinking about what Oscar had just said. "I'm making it up to you." Everything he was doing now was his way of compensating me for the time when, because of our Cold War, he manipulated the Golden Orchid Award for Best Actress and gave it to another nominated actress, Elizabeth. So he knew he was wrong after all? For Oscar, punishment or compensation was as simple as waving a hand. For me, it took tremendous effort just to crawl out of the pit I had fallen into. It really hurt. We were supposed to be in a relationship. Yet after we broke up, I wandered around like a pitiful stray cat, running from one production crew to another, begging for an audition opportunity. Even directors who knew me well, who had worked with me many times and had once invited me to star in their next projects, turned me away. They would say, Penelope, it's not that we don't want you. They were afraid. If even an award as important as the Golden Orchid Award could be reassigned. It showed just how powerful the force I had offended was. No one dared risk angering Oscar by casting me. From a rising star in the entertainment industry to a washed-up actress with no work, in an industry where trends changed at lightning speed. A career gap of nearly half a year was especially fatal for a female performer. As a businessman, Oscar would never understand how difficult life was for an actor. Or perhaps he understood everything perfectly and simply wanted to punish me. After I was discharged from the hospital and began recovering, my agent, Lisa, couldn't bear to see me like that. She carefully dressed me up and pushed me toward a year-end gala. She knew Oscar would be there. You're still too young to understand these things. If not for anything else, do it for yourself. I repeated Lisa's words silently to myself. And sure enough, I saw Oscar at the gala. He was chatting with people gracefully, as if nothing had ever happened. The moment I saw him, however, I couldn't hold myself together. Instinctively, I wanted to run away, but Oscar came after me. He grabbed my hand and studied me carefully. "You've lost weight," he said. That single sentence shattered my composure. As Oscar held me in his arms for those few seconds, I kept asking myself why I was crying. "Let's get back together, Penelope. I can't live without you." I looked at that familiar face, and suddenly it felt ridiculous. How could he possibly be unable to live without me? I began to question whether what I felt for Oscar was really love, or whether I simply wanted the protection he provided. Yes, nothing was pure anymore. I started living in constant fear of losing him, terrified of being abandoned again, even more terrified of losing everything I had now regained. Chapter 6. We soon arrived at the restaurant. I followed behind him, walking slowly. Suddenly, Oscar turned around, frowning slightly. He shook one of his arms. "Isn't my little cat going to hold my arm this time and show everyone who I belong to?" What he really meant was that he wanted me to link arms with him. But when those words reached my ears, I remembered how spoiled, jealous, and unreasonable I had been when we were together before. Back then, he was always so distant. Even if I wanted to hold his arm, I would have to act spoiled for a long time before he reluctantly extended it toward me. And no, it's better not to. Director Reyes is here, and there'll probably be a lot of people inside. It wouldn't be good for your reputation. Oscar froze for a second. He stood there quietly, staring at me. After a moment, he turned away and strode forward. Oh, just then, a waiter pushed open the private room's door. To my surprise, the first person I saw upon entering was the one I least wanted to see. "Sir, you're here." Elizabeth, dressed in a white dress, greeted us with a bright smile. She was the woman who had received the Best Actress award that should have belonged to me. So, Oscar had invited her here too, and this meeting with Director Reyes, he had brought her as well. What exactly was this supposed to mean? No matter how skilled an actress I was, there was no way I could remain composed in a situation like this. Elizabeth walked over warmly and took my hand. Her eyes were full of concern. "Penelope, it's been so long. The last time we met was at the awards ceremony. I heard you were sick and that your health hasn't been very good. Are you feeling better lately?" She looked at me with bright, sparkling eyes. The warmth of her palm spread steadily into mine. After spending so many years in the entertainment industry, I could no longer tell whether Elizabeth's concern was genuine or merely a performance. "Who told you to come?" Oscar's cold voice sounded from beside me, his gaze fixed on Elizabeth's hand holding mine. Then, without warning, he pulled me straight into his arms. Chapter 7. It was me who invited her. "Oscar, what's wrong? Why so serious?" Director Reyes walked out of the private room with a smile. The moment I saw him, I immediately greeted him respectfully. Director Reyes looked me over from head to toe before saying, I've heard of you. Your name is Penelope, right? You were nominated for the Golden Orchid Award too. The director of the project you starred in mentioned you to me. He said you have a rare spark, so I specifically watched your performance in that film. You were very good. But now that I've met you in person, you're actually quite different from what I imagined. I didn't quite understand what Director Reyes meant, nor did I dare ask. I simply smiled politely. Thank you for your appreciation. If I ever have the opportunity to audition for your next project, it would be a tremendous honor. Ha ha ha. Oscar, this kid is really impressive. Director Reyes glanced at us and laughed heartily. At that moment, Oscar's arm reached toward me. He wanted to put it around my shoulders, but I subtly stepped aside and avoided him. Director Reyes and Elizabeth walked ahead of us toward the private room. Oscar and I followed behind them. Suddenly, he grabbed my hand and lowered his voice. I didn't know Elizabeth would be here. I wasn't the one who arranged for her to come. I gently pulled my hand away and looked at him. After hesitating for a moment, I said, she's the Golden Orchid Award's Best Actress. Director Reyes probably invited her himself. I'm already very happy just to have the chance to meet Director Reyes today. After saying that, I continued walking forward, but Oscar pulled me back again. For the first time, I saw such a complicated expression on his face. Shock, confusion, and a trace of anger. Penelope, what exactly is wrong with you? Are you still angry with me? You won't even listen to my explanation. Chapter 8. I looked at Oscar in confusion. I'm not. I defended myself softly. The fact that you gave me a chance to meet Director Reyes is already more than enough. Oscar shook his head. His grip on my hand tightened. You're still angry about the Golden Orchid Award, aren't you? I've already done everything I can to make it up to you. Elizabeth wasn't invited by me. I know, you're hurting me. Oscar was strong. No matter how hard I struggled, I couldn't free myself from his grasp. The hand he was holding had begun to ache and go numb. Just as Oscar and I reached a stalemate, a large hand suddenly reached out from behind and grabbed Oscar's arm, preventing him from moving any closer to me. A calm male voice sounded. What exactly is going on here? Bullying someone? I looked up and saw a young man standing behind us. Judging by the way he dressed, he didn't seem to be a staff member. He looked more like a recent college graduate, youthful, yet remarkably confident. Oscar's face darkened immediately. Who are you? Who I am doesn't matter. What matters is that you can't bully a woman here. She already said you were hurting her. Why haven't you let go of her yet? Take your paws off. Pause. I looked at Oscar's long, slender fingers with their well-defined joints and stared blankly for a few seconds. At that moment, Director Reyes heard the commotion. He came out from inside the room and pointed at the young man. Emilio, you little brat with no manners. What are you causing trouble for this time? Chapter 9. For a moment, the atmosphere became awkward. Emilio still hadn't let go. He continued blocking Oscar's path. But when he heard Director Reyes, he called out, Dad? Director Reyes immediately walked over and pushed Emilio's hand away. Oscar, this is my son. He's been studying abroad all these years and just returned home today. He's still young and doesn't understand proper etiquette. I hope you'll forgive him. Oscar glanced at Emilio before straightening the wrinkles in his clothes. It's fine, Uncle Reyes. Just a small misunderstanding. Standing beside them, I quietly rubbed the forearm Oscar had squeezed painfully and hid it behind my back. Fortunately, the waiters began serving the food. Once the atmosphere eased, everyone took their seats around the large round table. Throughout the meal, Oscar and I didn't exchange a single word. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched him raise his wine glass to his lips. An invisible barrier hung between us. At that moment, Director Reyes set down his chopsticks and finally addressed the real purpose of the gathering. For this new project, I've auditioned quite a few new actresses, but none of them have truly impressed me. So I watched the award-winning works from this year's Golden Orchid Awards. Elizabeth, your expressiveness is excellent. And Penelope, I really like the control you have over your acting. I'd like both of you to come audition for me tomorrow. Elizabeth's smile brightened instantly. That's wonderful. Thank you, Director Reyes. I stood up and raised my glass, lightly clinking it against his. Thank you very much. At that moment, I felt someone's gaze settle on me. I turned my head slightly. My eyes met Emilio's. Thinking back to what had happened earlier, he had probably figured out my relationship with Oscar. I immediately looked away. Unexpectedly, Oscar stood up, one arm wrapped around my waist while he raised his own glass and toasted Director Reyes. Director Reyes looked at the two of us with satisfaction. That look made me feel uncomfortable. Chapter 10. After dinner ended, I sat in Oscar's car. The air conditioner was blowing cold air directly at me. Oscar reached out, intending to adjust it for me, but I switched it off before he could. His hand remained suspended in midair for a few seconds before returning to the steering wheel. I noticed the veins standing out on the back of his hand. Tomorrow's audition, I'll have someone drive you there. No, that's too much trouble. My apartment is much closer to the film studio. Oscar said nothing else, but I soon realized the car wasn't heading toward my apartment at all. Instead, it seemed to be driving toward Oscar's private residence. Confused, I glanced at him. Stay at my place tonight. I'll take you to the audition tomorrow. It wasn't a question. It was a command. Something seemed to lodge itself in my chest. Sitting in the passenger seat, I caught sight of my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were dull and lifeless. It was as if a layer of fog had settled over my face. I didn't want to. I didn't want to go. Your house is far from the film studio. I'd have to wake up much earlier tomorrow. I'm exhausted today. I don't want to deal with anything unnecessary. I think our relationship has become complicated. Being around you no longer makes me happy the way it used to. But none of those words ever left my mouth. Not even after Oscar drove into the parking garage of his private residence. Because I was afraid. And because I was lost. Chapter 11. There weren't many changes in Oscar's private residence. The spotless white walls and black furniture were still there. The only difference was a small lemon tree by the floor-to-ceiling window in the living room. It was even bearing fruit. I remembered that Oscar didn't like plants. He couldn't tolerate yellowing or withered leaves appearing in front of him. Because of that, I had once gone out of my way to give him a small cactus. I had hoped he would place it on his office desk so he could see it often, and think of me often as well. But after I gave it to him, I never saw that little cactus again. Had he thrown it away? Then who was this lemon tree for? Young master, Miss Flora, the housekeeper who worked for Oscar's family, came over after hearing our voices. I had lived here for a long time, so she knew me. Hello, Aunt Flora. Miss Penelope, please wear these slippers. Flora bent down and took out a pair of pink slippers with bows from the shoe cabinet. I accepted them. They were the same style as the slippers I used to wear when I lived here. But they weren't the same pair. They were new. After I put them on, Oscar took my hand and led me toward the floor-to-ceiling window. A faint citrus fragrance lingered around us. I remember you always said the house felt too cold and lifeless. So I had them plant a lemon tree. Oscar brushed aside a few leaves before gently supporting a pale yellow lemon in his palm. I blinked at him in confusion. Seeing my expression, Oscar took a deep breath. You put lemon slices in your water bottle every day. So I planted it. It was for you. My gaze returned to the lemon tree. For me? But I didn't even like lemons. I only drank lemon water because actresses had to maintain their figures and often dieted. My mouth would feel tasteless. So I'd drink it. And I didn't even dare add honey. It was sour and unpleasant. I glanced at Oscar. To my surprise, there was a hint of anticipation in his eyes. Thank you, but Before I could finish speaking, Oscar suddenly scooped me up and threw me over his shoulder as he headed upstairs. Wait! Put me down! Oscar! Chapter 12. Being carried over his shoulder the entire way made blood rush to my head. Leaving me dizzy, Oscar gently set me down on the large bed. My vision darkened, and I held on to him while recovering for a moment. MMPH. Before I could finish speaking, Oscar kissed me. His kisses had always been more passionate than the man himself. Caught off guard, I turned away instinctively, but Oscar held the back of my neck and pulled me back into the kiss. Unable to endure it any longer, I bit him hard. Oscar winced and wiped his lower lip. Only a floor lamp in the corner illuminated the room, casting everything in a dim glow. Half kneeling before me, Oscar held both of my thighs in place with one hand. His dark eyes gleamed in the low light. It's been too long. I can barely breathe. Feeling uncomfortable, I looked away and spoke cautiously. Penelope, look at me. I had no choice but to meet his gaze. Without realizing it, my fingers dug into my own thigh. I was wrong. Everything you wanted, everything you lost, I'll give it back to you. Stop avoiding me. I know my flaws. I'm trying to change. His words left me confused. My prolonged silence seemed to make Oscar uneasy. He stood up and pulled me tightly into his arms. No matter what happens, Penelope, you can only look at me. There can only be me in your eyes. Late that night, Oscar had already fallen asleep beside me. His arms were wrapped around my waist, and his head rested against my neck. The faint sound of his breathing reached my ears. Feeling thirsty, I carefully shifted my arm and switched on the bedside lamp. Only then did I discover something on the other side of the lamp. The little cactus I had once given Oscar. Although cacti were famously easy to keep alive, the fact that Oscar hadn't thrown it away and had instead carefully kept it here already felt unbelievable. I know my flaws. I'm trying to change. His words suddenly echoed in my mind. Was Oscar really changing? A sharp sting throbbed through my forearm. The arm he had bruised earlier during our argument before dinner still hadn't been treated. I quietly sighed. Even if he really was changing, I would never trust him as completely as I once had. Everything Oscar promised me existed only under one condition. That he loved me. That he wanted me. But love was the most intangible, the most unreliable thing in the world. I had no way of guaranteeing that I would always be loved. Perhaps the thing I needed to hold on to now was tomorrow's audition. At the very least, I couldn't make the same mistake as before. No matter what happened, I had to carve out a way to survive for myself. For the day Oscar might abandon me again. Chapter 13. Oscar and I both got up very early the next morning, just as he had promised yesterday. Sitting in the car, I rested my head against the window and patted my cheeks, trying to wake myself up a little. The truth was, I was nervous. I had watched one or two of Elizabeth's works before and knew a bit about her. She was an exceptionally talented actress with a strong reputation in the industry. Professional, dedicated, and hardworking. Compared to her, my portfolio consisted of only one moderately successful drama series and 2 films. One of those films was Meet Spring, which had been nominated for the Golden Orchid Awards this year. The other was Girl Arno, the film I made when I debuted at 18. Girl Arno told the story of an ordinary girl from a small county town who dreamed of putting down roots in a big city. After being battered by reality, she ultimately returned to her hometown and spent the rest of her life there in peace. I had never received formal acting training. After the college entrance examination, my grades were good enough for an ordinary university, but I came from a single-parent family. My mother was raising my younger sister and me on her own, and life was already difficult enough. She couldn't afford the cost of sending me to college. After discussing it together, I decided that I wanted to become financially independent as soon as possible and help support the family. So I gave up my chance to attend university and chose to work in a factory instead. Before entering the factory, I went to a photo studio and had my first ID photo taken. Later, the owner said he wanted to display my photo outside as a sample and was willing to pay me 500 yuan for it. I agreed without hesitation. As luck would have it, the director of Girl Arno was searching for a lead actress at the time. She came to our small county town for research and casting. Passing by the photo studio, she saw my photograph. When I received the director's call inviting me to audition, I was living the life of an electronics factory worker, starting at 6 in the morning, finishing at 10 at night, and spending every waking moment inspecting components. I couldn't believe someone like me had been chosen. After the director repeatedly assured me that my travel expenses would be reimbursed, I boarded a bus and traveled for more than 2 hours to attend the audition. There were countless bright-eyed young girls at the audition that day, all dressed in beautiful dresses. As for me, I wore my only white shirt, which I had borrowed from another girl at the factory the night before. It was far too long on me, almost like a short dress. Several times, I wanted to run away, but I had promised the director that I would come, and if I gave my word, I had to keep it. Penelope, here. I knocked lightly on the door twice and entered the audition room. What I hadn't expected was that everyone inside seemed deeply interested in me. I hadn't even finished introducing myself before the director rose from her chair. She cupped my face in her hands and studied my eyes carefully. Has anyone ever told you that you look like a stray cat searching for itself? From the moment the gears of fate began to turn, the director's words became a prophecy. Everything unfolded exactly as she had predicted. I was just like Girl Arno, always yearning to touch a sky that didn't belong to me, and I was also that wandering stray cat. Chapter 14. The filming of Girl Arno lasted an entire year. The moment it aired, it created a huge sensation throughout the industry. Its success was unstoppable. Arno allowed the insecure Penelope to realize that so many people could actually like her. With admiration comes responsibility. I didn't waste my popularity by taking on low-quality productions just to cash in on the hype. Instead, I signed with an agency that valued talent and ability. Together with my manager, Lisa, I carefully selected the best scripts within my capabilities. Whenever I interacted with fans, I always showed them the best version of myself. I often stayed up late into the night studying scripts and analyzing characters until dawn. Not having formal training meant I had to catch up with everyone else. It meant I had to work even harder. It was exhausting. But who isn't exhausted? Seeing positive comments from fans made me happy. Seeing my mother and younger sister living good lives made me happy. Everything changed completely after I met Oscar. The first time I met him was at a sponsor's banquet. One businessman insisted that I drink from a paired wedding-style toast with him, while the other sponsors surrounded me, mocking me and refusing to let me leave. My manager, Lisa, tried several times to intervene, only to be thrown out by the businessman. Just when I felt helpless, Oscar arrived and had someone kick open the private room's door. He took me away from that place. It really was a cliché, melodramatic story, but reality can be like that. At the moment when I was most frightened and most in need of help and protection, Oscar appeared. At the time, he seemed mature and gentlemanly. He promised me love and opportunities. To someone like me, who had entered society and struggled from a young age, he was a guiding star. But the truth was that we had grown up in completely different worlds. I wanted so badly to be worthy of Oscar that I forced myself to change. I clung to him desperately and constantly tried to show my affection. All of it made it seem as though the stray cat had finally moved into a castle. But when disagreements arose between Oscar and me, I finally realized that I needed to wake up. I needed to stop dreaming. Chapter 15. Oscar drove me to the film studio complex and didn't leave until someone from Director Reyes's team came to meet me. Call me after the audition. Okay. Good luck. Drive safely. When I entered the conference room, I discovered that not only was Director Reyes there, but his son Emilio was there as well. Penelope, you're here? Wait a little longer. Elizabeth is still on her way. Here, take a look at the script first. Emilio walked over and handed me the script for the audition. After flipping through a few pages, I froze. I asked uncertainly, "This is a dual female lead mystery film?" Emilio nodded and added, "A dual female lead mystery revenge thriller." A realization suddenly struck me. Could it be that this movie was planning to cast both Elizabeth and me as the leads? The further I read, the more captivated I became. If this film really made it to theaters, its box office performance would be phenomenal. Sorry, traffic was terrible. I'm late. Elizabeth pushed open the door, spotted us, and greeted everyone with a smile. Emilio handed her a copy of the script as well, but she looked as though she already knew what the story was about. Soon, everyone's gaze landed on me. Out of instinct, I swallowed nervously. "What is it?" Director Reyes shook his head. "Nothing. Read this section first. Then the two of you can perform it together." I immediately began flipping through the pages, quickly memorizing one of the scenes. Chapter 16. The film was called A Humble Attempt. It told the story of a troubled girl named Nova who falsely claimed that her homeroom teacher had sexually assaulted her. Levi, who had always loved her, killed the teacher to avenge her. Levi had always been a quiet, well-behaved student at school, combined with the alibi Nova provided. Nobody ever suspected her. The two of them kept the secret hidden for 10 years. The statute of limitations was about to expire, meaning the crime could no longer be prosecuted. Yet throughout those 10 years, Nova was tormented by guilt and nightmares. She eventually developed severe mental illness. At the same time, Levi was diagnosed with cancer. Afraid that she no longer had enough time to tell Nova how she felt, Levi finally confessed her love. But Nova told her the truth. The teacher had never assaulted her. An innocent man had been killed because of her lie. Levi realized that all the pressure and suffering she had endured for so many years had stemmed from Nova. In a fit of rage, she killed her. Afterward, she returned to her hometown carrying Nova's ashes. She had also decided to end her own life there. At that moment, Nova's mother told her, Nova inherited her father's mental illness when she was little. The condition was unstable, and her father died young. That bastard teacher found out about it and used it against her. The day Nova came home, her clothes were a mess, and there was blood all over her pants. Thank you, Levi. You've always stayed by her side. Nova's mother's words hit Levi like a bucket of ice water poured over her head. Only then did she realize the truth. The only innocent person she had ever killed was the woman she loved. At the end of the story, Levi took her own life beside Nova's grave. Chapter 17. The role assigned to me was Nova, while Elizabeth would play Levi. The scene for the audition was the moment. 10 years later, when Nova finally confessed the truth to Levi, after Elizabeth and I settled into the proper emotions, we began. At this point in the script, Nova was in an extremely fragile mental state. In some ways, it was similar to how I had been after breaking up with Oscar, so the performance came fairly naturally to me. I sat on the floor when I saw Elizabeth approaching. Tears lingered in my eyes for several seconds before slowly spilling down my cheeks. I was wrong, Levi. I shouldn't have lied to you. He never forced himself on me. He never did. Ha ha ha. I only said it because I thought it would be fun. Fun? Elizabeth suddenly grabbed me by the collar. Her gaze was icy. My lips trembled, yet not a single word came out. Then, unexpectedly, she slowly loosened her grip. The look in her eyes softened, or at least appeared to. My heart tightened. According to the script, she was supposed to be furious right now and slap me across the face. Was Elizabeth deliberately choosing not to follow the script? She leaned closer and closer until her face was only inches from mine. You were assaulted. She cupped my face and spoke each word deliberately. What? It's already happened. Whether it did or not doesn't matter anymore. From now on, it happened. Nova, you have to stick to that story. Otherwise, you'll become the murderer who killed both the teacher and me. My heart pounded wildly. How was I supposed to respond? That's right. I was playing a madwoman. Anything a madwoman did could make sense. At first, I nervously kept brushing one side of my hair back again and again. Then, all at once, I lunged forward and tackled her to the ground. In a trembling voice, I repeated over and over, Levi is right. I was. Save me. Please save me. Elizabeth froze for 5 seconds. She didn't add any more dialogue. Instead, she simply held me in her arms and gently stroked my hair. Then, at the end, she placed a kiss on my hair. Chapter 18. That was where the scene ended. Director Reyes was very satisfied with both Elizabeth's performance and mine. The truth is, Elizabeth read the script earlier than you did, so we asked her to add some improvisation based on her interpretation of the character. And judging from today, the two of you worked together remarkably well. So that was what had happened. I looked at Elizabeth. She handed me a tissue so I could wipe away the tears on my face. Director Reyes patted Emilio on the back and said to us, this script was actually written by Emilio, so we'd like him to direct the film himself. If everything goes smoothly, we'd like to sign both of you for the project. I was naturally thrilled. The story captivated me. It was exactly the kind of role I had always wanted to challenge myself with. And my co-star would be Elizabeth. She was a professionally trained actress who had graduated from a prestigious film academy. I knew I could learn a great deal from her. I have no objections. Thank you, director. Thank you, Elizabeth. As I was leaving the studio complex, Elizabeth called out to me. We walked side by side down the road. To be honest, I've always felt incredibly lucky that I won the Golden Orchid Award this time. Every time I see you, Penelope, I feel guilty. But this really wasn't Elizabeth's fault. It had been Oscar's behind-the-scenes manipulation. I couldn't blame her for that. That isn't your responsibility. Your talent deserves that award. Elizabeth slowly shook her head. Penelope, I've actually known about you for a long time. When I was a freshman in college, the director of Girl Arno came to our school to cast actors. I was one of the students selected to audition. Everyone said the director would definitely choose me. But in the end, I wasn't chosen. So when Girl Arno was released, I immediately went to watch it. I had never seen acting that felt so natural before. You're incredibly talented. I was very jealous of you back then. Elizabeth's words caught me completely by surprise. I had never imagined that someone would envy me one day. After all, if it hadn't been for a director discovering us, Elizabeth and I would never have crossed paths. When she was 18, she was studying what she loved at film school. When I was 18, I was working long hours in an electronics factory just to make a living. So I finally voiced the insecurities and doubts I had always kept buried inside. Elizabeth merely smiled softly. But the things you're worrying about are things that never happened. The reality is that you're an excellent actress right now, and a lot of people love your work. You need to keep looking forward. Chapter 19. After saying goodbye to Elizabeth, Oscar came to pick me up. At first, the atmosphere between us was pleasant. Then he asked, "What kind of project is it this time? Did the audition go well?" "It went well. I've already agreed to sign on." "What kind of project?" I kept my eyes on the road ahead and answered calmly. "A mystery thriller. I play a mentally unstable woman." "What?" Oscar immediately slowed the car. The expression on his face gradually stiffened. To my surprise, however, he didn't say anything else about it. After returning to his private residence, I was exhausted and went to take a shower. When I came out of the bathroom, I saw Oscar standing there with a deep frown, holding my phone. "What are you doing? Why did he add you?" we asked at the same time. I was completely confused. I wanted to see who had contacted me and reached for my phone. Instead, Oscar tossed it onto the bed. "What are you doing? Why did Emilio add you?" "Emilio is the director of this film now. So he added me." "What's the problem?" "That's exactly the problem." Oscar's eyes were bloodshot. "I've been wondering why you've been different ever since you came back. Is it because you don't love me anymore? Is Emilio making a move on you?" His accusation was so absurd that I almost laughed. "No, what exactly do you think I am?" Oscar shook his head and gripped my shoulders. "Turn down this film. Impossible." I met his gaze directly and spoke each word clearly. "Why should I give up such a great opportunity? This is a role I love, and acting is the career I love. I'm not asking you to give up your career, just this film. I'll arrange something else for you, whatever you want. I can create as many leading roles for you as you like." I pushed his hands off my shoulders. "Today you're asking me to give up a film. What about tomorrow? What will you ask me to give up for you tomorrow?" "My life?" Chapter 20. Oscar's body trembled slightly. He stared at me. "Are you really going to fight with me over something like this?" A bitter smile crossed my face. "So you're going to hurt me the same way you did before? Are you going to use your influence to quietly blacklist me and teach me a lesson?" Oscar froze. "I wouldn't do that." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. "I don't love you anymore, Oscar. Ever since we got back together, I've been miserable, even more miserable than when we broke up. What you feel for me isn't love. It's possessiveness, a suffocating possessiveness that doesn't let me breathe." After saying that, I pushed past him and headed for the door. Oscar grabbed me and pulled me back. "No, you're the one who's changed. You weren't like this before. You loved me, but did you love me back then? Did you respect me? You kept asking what gave me the right to argue with you." My voice gradually softened. "I tried so hard to become someone worthy of you. But, forget it. Let's end it here, for the sake of the love I once had for you. Please don't hurt me anymore, Oscar." I had never imagined that one day I would be able to walk out of Oscar's house so easily. It was time to end it. This twisted relationship. Chapter 21. After that, Oscar never came looking for me again. I threw myself into filming. The busy schedule kept me focused on myself, and little by little, I stopped thinking about Oscar. 6 months later, a humble attempt finally wrapped production. At the wrap party, the atmosphere was especially lively because the entire cast and crew had gotten along so well during filming. I ended up drinking quite a bit. After the banquet ended, I walked out of the hotel slightly drunk and received a familiar text message. "Can I come pick you up?" It was Oscar, struggling to focus on the screen. I typed back, "No." A few moments later, my phone started ringing. Even after I hung up twice, Oscar kept calling. With no other choice, I answered. His voice sounded hoarse. "Are you at Lily Hotel?" I let out a short laugh. "You already know, don't you? Why bother asking?" I had no idea how Oscar had found out about the wrap party. There was a long silence on the other end. I just want to see you. There's no need. You can turn on a screen and see me anytime. It's over. Oscar, you should understand what that means. At that moment, Elizabeth suddenly walked over from nearby. Sweetheart, you're drunk. Let me drive you home. It's on my way anyway. Okay. During the months we spent filming together, Elizabeth and I had become incredibly close. She was the first true friend I had made in the entertainment industry. I glanced at my still-lit phone screen. Then I said to the person on the other end, "I'll get home safely," and hung up. Sitting in Elizabeth's van, music that we both loved played softly through the speakers. I rolled down the window. The summer night breeze brushed against my face, cool and refreshing, helping me sober up a little. Elizabeth patted my hand. "What are you thinking about? I'm wondering what people will think of the movie." Elizabeth burst out laughing. "Sweetheart, there's a sentence you need to repeat to yourself every day from now on." I looked at her curiously. "What sentence?" "Everything that happens benefits me in some way. If the reviews are bad, then we'll learn from our mistakes and improve next time. If the response is great, we'll keep working hard. Either way, it's a good thing." She was right. We were still young. There would be many more projects ahead of us. The road in front of us was long. Chapter 22. 1 year later, at the preview screening of A Humble Attempt, as the film played, I listened to the audience gasp, react, and whisper in amazement. My heart gradually settled. The film was ultimately nominated for the Hwatian Awards, and Elizabeth and I won Best Actress together. It became the first and only dual Best Actress victory in the history of the awards. When it was time to give my acceptance speech, I didn't break down in tears the way I had imagined. I never thought I would stand here one day. Thank you to the director. Thank you to Elizabeth. Thank you to the entire production team. Without all of you, I wouldn't be who I am today. After the Hwatian Awards ceremony ended, I saw Oscar backstage. He looked tired. When he noticed me approaching, he paused for a moment and turned away, pretending he hadn't seen me. But I called out to him, "Oscar, let's talk." We found a quiet place. He spoke first. "Congratulations, Penelope, Best Actress." "Thank you." He looked at me silently. I attended the preview screening too. I sat alone in the back corner. "You really have changed, and that's a good thing. I hope you continue doing well." I smiled at him, feeling completely at peace. "Oscar, nobody can live their entire life based on a single moment. What we have now is enough, and I hope your career continues to thrive as well." Oscar and I would never belong to the same world. There was no reason for me to keep forcing myself to change just to get closer to him. Sunk costs should never determine important decisions, and every important decision in my life belongs to me. I am simply myself, not a pitiful stray cat, not someone's creation. From this moment forward, I am simply myself. Extras, Oscar's story. Chapter 1. For the first 25 years of my life, I had been called many things, but there was one label that clung to me like a stain I could never wash away. A humiliation that followed me everywhere. An illegitimate child. My mother had been the other woman, yet she never cared about what people said. "Oscar, what are you afraid of? You already have everything now. What are you afraid of?" When I was a child and first moved into the Oscar family estate, I overheard the servants talking about how my mother had forced out the legal wife and taken her place. I couldn't judge her actions, because no matter what happened, everyone saw me as the one who had benefited. I couldn't say my mother loved me very much, nor could I say I loved her deeply. It was simply that we only had each other. So I lived a difficult life, a hard-working life. I became my father's most outstanding son, even if I was the illegitimate one. But everything I did was merely for survival. After enduring decades of struggle, just as my father was preparing to hand the corporation over to me, my mother fell ill. Terminal lung cancer. Chapter 2. She told me that I was the only one who knew. She forbade me from telling my father, because she believed it would affect my future career. But the poor woman didn't know the truth. My father had known all along, and he had done absolutely nothing. With the power and resources of the Oscar family, they could easily have found the most renowned specialists to treat her. At the very least, they could have eased her suffering. But my father did nothing. He didn't love her. Everyone is selfish. Before her death, my mother's frail, yellowed body lay weakly on the bed. Dark fluid dripped from the corners of her mouth. She could no longer speak, yet she stubbornly insisted that I bring her a pen and paper. Again and again, she wrote, "I want to see him. I want to see him." Unfortunately, her final wish was never fulfilled. I witnessed a life slipping away with my own eyes. Something impossible to hold on to, impossible to stop. After my mother's death, I inherited my father's business. The people around me were gradually replaced with my own trusted subordinates. The rumors and gossip slowly disappeared, yet I felt more and more like a lone boat adrift at sea, surviving in this world by itself. I was exhausted. I needed something to hold on to, something that would allow me to rest, even for a moment. Then I met Penelope. Chapter 3. It happened at a movie press conference. As the CEO of the group and an investor in numerous entertainment projects, I had been invited to attend. The event itself was unbearably dull. After sitting through part of it, I stepped outside for some air and decided to smoke a cigarette. The conference had already begun, so the hallway outside was quiet. I stared blankly at the glowing tip of my cigarette. Then I suddenly heard hurried footsteps. A woman in a pale pink dress came running toward me, carrying a canvas tote bag. When she saw me, she paused for a few seconds. Her large eyes blinked innocently several times. Then she immediately tried to push open the door and enter. The problem was that the door needed to be pulled. She pushed twice without success. After standing there awkwardly for about 5 seconds, I finally said, "Pull the door." She looked at me blankly for a moment. Then her face turned red. "Oh." She seemed embarrassed, suddenly remembering something. She shoved her canvas tote bag into my hands. "Hello. I'm so sorry. Could you hold this for me for a moment?" My manager suddenly disappeared, and I can't get in touch with her. As she spoke, she pulled out a bag of chocolate coins from the tote. Simple, straightforward. "Please help yourself. I just bought them, so they're fresh." The last time I had seen that kind of chocolate was when I was very young, before I moved into the Oscar family estate. To this day, I'm not sure whether it was because she was so sincere and naive, or because she was beautiful, but I took the canvas tote bag from her. Later, I learned her name, Penelope, a rookie actress with no powerful connections and no one backing her up. Chapter 4. After I returned home, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I began using every connection and resource available to create opportunities to run into her. Over time, Penelope and I grew closer. Whenever she saw me, she would blush and greet me softly. "Hello, Mr. Oscar." I could see right through Penelope. At her core, she was very much like me, afraid of the world, yet forced to survive through her own efforts. I believed she was someone I could completely hold on to. After we got together, I enjoyed the feeling of keeping Penelope by my side. Having someone whose entire world revolved around you, it felt completely different from those women who deliberately attached themselves to me for money and status. I was certain that Penelope loved me, and she had to stay that way forever. She couldn't slip beyond my control, because if she did, I would lose control. When Penelope wanted to take on a role that didn't fit the image I had for her, I opposed it almost immediately. It was also the only time she ever truly stood up to me. I couldn't understand what gave her the confidence to argue with me. After we broke up, I watched her spiral downward. She had no acting jobs. She even ended up in the hospital. For a poor little stray cat, that punishment should have been more than enough. So I gave her manager a hint. I arranged that banquet. The final outcome was supposed to unfold exactly as I wanted. She would become my perfect little cat once again. But things didn't go according to plan. Chapter 5. Penelope changed. She became more cautious, more careful. The only thing she showed me anymore was people-pleasing obedience. The love in her eyes was gone. Technically, that should have made her easier to control. Yet I wasn't happy. It felt like raising a beloved cat at home, only for it to disappear for a few days and return changed. It stopped eating, stopped drinking, curled itself up in a corner, watching you timidly whenever you reached out your hand. Instead of rubbing affectionately against you, it only observed you from a distance, Was it wondering when you might throw it away again? I wouldn't. One punishment should have been enough for Penelope to remember forever. Yet the distance between us only grew wider. Even when I tried to openly discuss what had happened, Penelope would avoid the subject. Then new people began appearing in her life. I became afraid. I tried using the same methods as before to regain control of her, but she shouted at me angrily. But did you love me back then? Did you respect me? You kept asking what gave me the right to argue with you. Looking at Penelope's tears, I didn't know what to do. Couldn't we go back to the way things used to be? Couldn't you treat me the way you once did? Couldn't you like me the way you once did? I could give you resources. I could give you money. No, in the eyes of a businessman, everything has a price. Everything can be exchanged for something of equal value. But love cannot. I experienced love once, a brief and fleeting love, but I failed to cherish it. I once read a sentence in a book. Only now do I fully understand what it meant. The moment you try to control someone else, they have already gained control over you. So from the very beginning, I had already lost. Lost in the most ridiculous way imaginable. Completely, utterly, defeated.